Sure. Okay, good evening, Igail, and this is John Gluckman. It's Wednesday, March the 14th already, calling from Vancouver, BC. Didn't shave a couple of days, but tonight's special guest is my good friend from Alberta, Debbie Ward. Obviously, we have Ron Borsima, and I think maybe at some point we'll have Ken Pepperdine on, Dr. Ken as well. But tonight's focus is going to be on energy, the meridians of the body, energy blockages, and all the amazing work that I found that Debbie does in that regard. So, Ron, do you have a couple of things that you want to say before we get started?
I'm just real anxious to hear Debbie talk.
Okay. Well, you won't have any trouble doing that, I can assure you.
That's good.
Shutting me up might be the bigger problem.
Okay, well, Debbie, so you and I have known one another on and off for about almost 10 years since we had the experience of this action. Now, I'm not going to tell the folks what that stands for.
We were mini Harry Potters.
but we met through energy healing of some sort, right? Called 0 Point at that point. And since then, before then, and obviously since then, you've done an awful lot in addition to that. So why don't you go ahead and take the floor and, guide us along the way for today's call. Tell us what you want to tell us.
Oh my goodness. All right. Thanks, John. I'll start with a little bit about my background. And yes, we go back quite a ways. And actually, I've been in the health industry for a very long time. I have had a holistic practice for 23 years, but before that, I was a pharmacist for 21 years. And so I've kind of done a complete day and night switch. My husband is also a pharmacist, retired now, and he said to me that I had gone to the dark side, and I just said, no, I saw the light. So I'll leave that where it is. But yeah, so, almost 44 years in the health industry makes me kind of old. But my practices and my products that I've endorsed are keeping me going. I had a wellness practice in my town of Barrhead for 18 of those years, and then moved my practice to a neighboring town. But I had a sign in my office that kind of summed up everything that I kind of believed in it, and the sign just said, wellness doesn't have to be difficult. If you get the toxins out, you get the nutrition in, and you get the voltage up, those are the three basic things. And by voltage up, that also entails the opening of the meridian flow, which has been, I guess, my main thing for all of these years. I've always tried to combine the best therapies and products that I knew of at the time. So I've definitely evolved through a lot of different treatment modalities, a lot of different product lines. But obviously where I am now is the best of the best that I know of and have had experience with. So over the years, I've used several modalities, QXCI biofeedback. So that was a computerized device where you tested people's electrical response to my minute amounts of different things. And that told the people a lot. And then there were homeopathic remedies that kind of went along with that. I've taken training in Touch for Health and brain gym, educational kinesiology, craniosacral therapy, acupressure, Reiki, reflexology, and all of those things. I didn't practice all of them all of the time, but they were part of my knowledge base, because just knowing some of that information helped me understand maybe the modality that I was using, even though I didn't necessarily put all of those into play. About 11 years ago, I purchased a pulse magnetic field therapy machine, which it's like whereas an MRI is a static field that takes a picture of the body, pulse magnetic field turns on and off a magnetic field that opens up. It makes the tissues actually expand and contract. So when you turn on a magnetic field, things contract. When you turn it off, they relax. And so when you do that, very, very rapidly, you get this basic massaging of every tissue in the body. And so that definitely helped. It did open up meridians, which, was always kind of my goal. What does the therapy do for meridians? Because, and I'll get into that more, why I believe that to be kind of the most important underlying factor. And the goal was always to assist the body to do its own healing and not just cover up something that, that my patients came to me with, because as a pharmacist, basically I was just helping cover up the symptoms of whatever they had gone to the doctor for. So I was kind of just a middleman, a tool in getting medications to patients that if they stopped their medication, typically their problem was still there. And that's what I always didn't feel good about when I was a pharmacist. I wasn't really fixing anything, and I thought there's got to be more to it. We have to get to the source. And if you get to the source of the problem, then you've got, a better chance of actually correcting it. So since the meridians had always been my main thing, I guess, that I was trying to correct. I was always testing people before I would do a therapy. I would do a test on all of the meridian system to see which ones, were blocked, and then after the therapy, I would retest them to see how many had opened. And then when they would come back, of course, then the test is to see how many actually stayed open. And so I've always been on this quest to find the things that turn on the body's electrical meridian system and keep it on. So I guess the meridian system, as we're having all these other calls in the past weeks, meridians pop into my mind constantly. So I'm really glad I actually have the opportunity now to explain how they can affect all of those things. We talked about food. Well, food is only as good as how much your body can absorb. So if your body can't absorb because, the body isn't handling things properly, the best food in the world can just get, basically, good food can get turned into toxins in the body depending on what the body does with it based on its ability. So detoxing was another one, and obviously, if the liver and the lungs and the skin and all those things don't have the right function, if they don't have the power or the energy to do their job, then you can't detox. Stress is a major one that affects meridians, and more specifically through the emotions, which I'm going to get to closer to the end. And then exercise. We talked about exercise, and that's one way of helping to open the meridians, but also if you're exercising a muscle and that muscle doesn't have power going to it, it fatigues. It's like when the doctor will send somebody to a physical therapist and they send them home with this, this list of exercises to do. If your muscles don't have the power going to them, then that asking the muscle to do that activity basically just fatigues the muscle. And so it was always about figuring out how to get the body working optimally so that, it could do its job. And anybody in the healthcare field should be there to just assist the body in doing its own thing properly. I don't really like the word healer, because nobody heals anything. The body does its own healing if you just give it the right tools, maybe the right modalities to help open up some blockages. And so yeah, this is really neat that I get to spend some time explaining. So
before you go, let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
So for those people like myself that never really get what the meridians are, from a chiropractic perspective, and many people will know this, our whole focus is on from the brain down and from the tailbone back up, the nervous system through all the nerves, basically we have a picture that the brain is the computer, the transmission line, or the power plant, as it were, transmission line, and each of the muscles are the motors through which you do things. And if there's interference along the way, whether there's a vertebrae that's out of place, or there's a pinched nerve going through a foramen or through the hole between the two discs, then you have interruption of flow. If you resolve that, then at least the muscles or the motors can get what they need. Also, we have the sympathetic nervous system, which operates in a similar way. You want to get rid of the blockage, but then this meridian is another system altogether. Explain the difference so we really get to the basics of what you're talking about.
Okay, it's the underlying system, basically. It's the underlying of the electrical system of the body. The body is a very electrical unit. It's not a physical, I mean, it is physical as well, but traditional medicine looks at the body as being, you know, basically blood and guts. It doesn't talk about energy very much. And so, you know, the way to resolve a problem is to give a chemical prescription or cut out the offending part that isn't doing its job. It doesn't address why those things are happening. In chiropractic, I know it's about structure. And, you know, if you have structural alignment, then you have, you know, better results in all systems in the body. But if you take that one step further, if your muscles don't have the energy going through them to hold that structure in place, it doesn't matter how many times you put the structure in place. If the muscles have no power to hold it, the structure goes out again. It's like, you know, I've had patients say, well, I keep going to the chiropractor and I have to go every week, but then I get out of the office, I step off the curb, and my, you know, my back goes out or my neck goes out or whatever it is. Because I use a lot of analogies with my patients, and I'll have them look at a door, and a door has hinges, okay? So you put the door in the door jamb, and everything's nice and straight. But if the hinges are broken, the minute you open that door, it sags because it doesn't have the support of the hinges holding it in place. And that's basically what the meridians are. The meridians are the circuits of electricity feeding all the muscles. And I've got lots of more information about meridians, and I have some slides if I can figure out how to do my PowerPoint in a minute. If those circuits are turned off, the muscles can't do their job. If they're turned on, the muscles have the power to hold the structure. And sometimes you'll get a meridian can be off even on just one side. And so then you think of a board hanging straight down with a hinge going, you know, equally stretched up to both corners. And if one of those, not a hinge, I'm sorry, a spring, if you visualize a spring, and if one of those springs is weak, then it can't hold, it can't do its part of the job. And so the stronger one will then have more power, and it pulls the structure out of alignment simply because one is doing its job and the other one isn't. And so the muscle that will hurt will be the one that's actually doing its job properly, because it's doing its job, but it's holding things crooked because the one that isn't doing its job can't do its equal share of the holding. And so you'll get that misalignment because one muscle might be too tight because it's got power to it and it's doing its job. The other muscle doesn't have power going to it, so it can't do its job, if you know that makes sense. I use visualization a lot, so you know, I'm visualizing this straight board with a spring and a spring. If this spring doesn't work, this spring is going to work, and it's going to make, you know, it's going to pull things out. So the meridians, I explain to my patients that the meridians are like the circuits of electricity, the wires running through the walls of your house. If you go to your breaker box and you turn off a bunch of the switches in your breaker box, maybe your TV doesn't work, maybe the furnace doesn't work, maybe a lamp doesn't work. And so going to that lamp or that TV and fiddling around with it and trying to figure out what doesn't work, that's not the problem. The problem is the energy getting to that part of the house. So if you flip your switches back on, everything's got power, everything works. Make sense? So, you know, I like to use analogies like that because it puts things into easy to understand terms for people. And I've got some slides actually that I put together. I'll just have to screen share here. See how I can do that. Okay.
We're seeing your screen. That's great. Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Good. Okay, now I can make them bigger. Can you read that okay?
Yes.
Because I'm actually going to read the slides just so people don't have to worry about missing anything. And I can make them big enough so they fit the whole screen, or if this is okay. Okay. Okay, so meridians are really my key thing. They've been kind of my thing for all the time I've been in holistic health. So meridians are electrical circuits that run through the physical body, bringing life-giving energy to muscles, organs, glands, and all the physical and neurological systems. Okay, so then I took this little more extensive, I'm going to have to move our, okay. I actually found this 2-screen definition that I wanted to read because it does sum everything up really well, and I'm going to, you know, touch on a lot of things, but basically, life-giving energy flows through the physical body in a specific pattern. This pattern was mapped more than 5,000 years ago by the Chinese and is described today in diagrams called meridian charts. Meridians pass through the body along 14 tangible channels, carrying energy into and affecting every organ and every physiological system, including the immune, the nervous, the endocrine, the circulatory, respiratory, digestive, skeletal, including teeth, muscular and lymphatic systems. These channels branch out like a tree, connecting hundreds of tiny electromagnetically distinct points along the surface of the skin, known as acupuncture points. Since these sensitive spots have a less electrical resistance than other areas of the skin, they can be stimulated with acupuncture needles or simple fingertip pressure to release or revive energy along those pathways. Energy meridians are important to a person's overall health as they conduct life force energy in the same way as the arteries transfer blood to vital organs throughout the body. Similarly, a meridian transports energy, carrying the life force, adjusting metabolism and removing blockages. This system also determines the rate and structure of cellular change within the body. Healthy flow of energy along the meridian pathways is as crucial to life as is the flow of blood, as we all realize that if there is no energy, there is no life. If a meridian's energy is obstructed, or if the flow gets interrupted by disease, infection, or trauma, the system it feeds is jeopardized. Now, I added in brackets after trauma, physical, nutritional, or emotional trauma. So that's kind of where, you know, where it's going to get into more of what I do. Does anybody have any questions at that point, or I mean, I could.
Kathy Manson here. Just I do go for acupuncture regularly, but one of the things that I believe, and I just want to clarify with your experience, is like I've got a lot of scar tissue that runs. A lot of it is up and down, so bisected some of those meridians, I think. So that is something that makes things much more challenging, correct, as far as the energy flows and stuff?
Yeah, that is correct. It depends where the scars are as well, because the meridians don't flow just on the surface of the skin. The meridian systems, you know, dive in and out deeper and less deep areas of the body. So when an acupuncturist uses a needle, sometimes they're having to go deeper, sometimes not as deep, to actually access those points. But definitely there are a lot of things that, that do block the meridians. And I have more information about that coming up here. But it would create more of a problem, but it doesn't mean the electricity can't get through if the other blockages are gone. The thing is, it might not be that scar tissue that's causing the blockage. It might be the emotional energy that is associated perhaps with where the scar came from and how the scar got there, because there would be an emotional component to that as well, unless you were completely unconscious when something happened to you and you didn't have any emotional response, but that's usually not the case. Does that help?
Yeah, sure. I was just curious because I think that, mine bisects, most of my gut or most of my belly up and down. So yeah. I know that it has had some impact, but
yeah, it definitely would. And I'll show you here in the next, this is a kind of a chart of how the meridians flow. They're pairs of circuits. So there are 12 paired meridians, and then there are 2 that are unilateral. The paired ones, these are showing the bilateral ones, they are mirror images on each side of the body. And even though they're named for the organs, like each one has a name, you'll see in that list down below, it doesn't it doesn't mean that that's the only organ, for example, that meridian deals with. But that's just the name given to them. For example, the stomach meridian runs head to toe, and it's one of the ones that's blocked in pretty much everybody that I see, unless I've worked on them before. There's another slide that shows the direction of the meridians. It's like track lighting through your body. They're all connected. These are not separate. They run along the fascia lines in the body, but they flow so that, there are 3 that flow down from the kind of upper chest area down to the tips of the fingers. They connect with another 3 that go up. They connect then from the upper body to ones that go down to the feet, and connect then with another one that goes back up. So it's like track lighting through your entire body. And it's like, if you think about a garden, and you've got a big garden, and you've got this garden sprinkler hose running, back and forth up and down the rows. And if you step on that garden hose at one corner of the garden, it stops the flow everywhere, right? So it's kind of like the chain is as strong as its weakest link, if that makes sense. Okay, so now this chart, if you want to, when I'm done with this, I can put that link in the chat when I'm out of the PowerPoint. This is just another one kind of showing the names and the pathway. That particular URL, this is takes you to a website, and this is an interactive chart. So if you were to go to that website and click on any one of those meridians, it would tell you what that meridian deals with in the body, and it tells you a little bit more about each one. So it's an interactive chart that that people can have a look at after the fact, if you like. So the next chart, the next 2 actually, are to do with the teeth. And it's amazing how some of these, it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. There's a tooth problem, and then all of a sudden, or at the same time, there's a problem with the organ that's on that same circuit. Or there's a problem with the organ on that circuit, and that ends up creating a problem with the tooth, if that makes sense. So here's another chart that shows you a little more without having to read the fine print. I can maybe make this a little bigger. You can kind of see at a glance different teeth and how they affect different organ systems, and that's because of again, that electrical connection with them. And this is as if you're looking at a person's face. So the upper teeth is the upper jaw. So, the left side of the chart is actually the person's right side of their face.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
So like the left side of the face, left upper teeth, I have shingle virus that's created actually, what's it called? Neuralgia.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything that you could give me? I've been dealing with this, Debbie. I've just finally gotten it diagnosed.
Okay.
So just curious, about which meridians, what I really need to do to fortify my system back, right?
Right. So have you had breakouts of the actual, shingles on the surface?
Yeah, what happened is I did have traumatic dental work, and immediately I had a shingles outbreak right at that tooth.
Okay, so the shingles,
Yeah.
is that the tooth, did you say?
Yeah, it broke out in the gum. I had the shingles outbreak in the gum line.
Oh, okay. Now that's interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
it is.
Viruses, they lay dormant in the body until something gives them the open door to actually have an effect. We all carry viruses around. It's why when people are going through a stressful time, suddenly they'll develop a cold sore, or they'll get a cold, because once your immune system gets down, or there's some sort of a trauma. And earlier when I was talking about trauma shutting down meridians, it's physical trauma, nutritional trauma, or emotional trauma. And if that happens to shut down and you've got that virus already in your system, you are more predisposed to having that show up in the weak spot, if that makes sense. So yeah, there are ways that you can fortify the meridians. I'm going to get into a little more of that.
Debbie, I know you have a number of slides that you want to get through to. So why don't you just go do that, and we'll leave the questions.
Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine, no problem.
Great.
Or we can, I was going to open it at the end for questions for anybody who had a question. So I'm going to go on to my next slide, and it's actually, this is a chart that's in my office. It's a wall chart. It was actually one that I got from a lady named Inga Dugans from South Africa. She was in Edmonton, and she was at Dr. Stephen Ung's third world conference on acupuncture and alternative medicine. And she really provided an aha moment for me, because she deals with reflexology. So those are points in the feet, generally, and the hands as well, but majority is the feet, and how those connect with the meridians. And that was, amazing for me, because at that point, meridians were a key thing, but I also had done reflexology and had trained that, but I hadn't really made the connection that they were related. And her work is fabulous. I gotta go on to my next slide. Okay, so here is a close-up of one of those little sections that's on the chart that I use all the time, and this is actually Dr. Dugan's here. But you can see, and the line only shows unilaterally, but they are bilateral. The same line would be, going down parallel on the other side, but it will show different health issues that could crop up because of a meridian being blocked. And you can actually see the end point of that meridian is right on the ball of the foot. And when I get a little closer to the end, I have a chart on the emotions. But what's interesting is one of the emotions associated with the kidney meridian is fear. And I had a client come in one day, and it was just like he was kind of an accumulation of all these things that just made sense about this. His priority trapped emotion was fear. His kidney meridian was shut down, and he had a scar in that exact point on the bottom of his foot from having stepped on glass as a kid, and because he had to jump into a ditch because a car was coming. So here's the connection between the physical spot, the energy meridian, and the emotion associated with all of that. And it all just, it manifested in him having all kinds of issues because of those things, but it all made sense how it kind of came together. So the next slide is ways to actually clear the meridian blockage. So acupuncture is one a lot of people are pretty familiar with. where very fine needles actually stimulate specific points on these sits. It can be done strictly with a needle, and then the needle can just be, stimulated a little bit, tweaked a little bit, or an electrical impulse can actually, be attached to the needle, or there can be something called moxibustion, where the needle is put in, but then there's a sort of a cone of kind of a mossy substance that's lit on fire, and that puts, it's not really open flame, it's smoke, but it heats down the acupuncture needle. And what that's just trying to do is open up that circuit, and those acupuncture points are on very specific points on the line, and generally on points that are to the surface, because that's where the needle can reach. Even though the meridian itself might go quite deep in other spots, they have to put the needle in where they can access the meridian closest to the surface. So then acupressure is topical finger pressure on these specific points, and also spinal reflex points. So there are points along on either side of the vertebra that are associated with these meridians as well. And that, some of you may be familiar with Touch for Health. That's a modality with Touch for Health. There's a book written by Jonathan Thie, Dr. Jonathan Thie, many years ago. I have it when it was one of the originals, and it's very old and dog-eared now. Reflexology is another modality, and that's where this kind of aha moment came with Dr. Dugan's, because there are endpoints of the meridians on the feet and hands. And so as you're doing you're doing reflexology on the feet, oftentimes you are stimulating endpoints for meridians that can temporarily help open them up. Same as massage. I think in massage they call them trigger points, and I don't know enough about regular massage to know if those trigger points are actually acupressure points. But very often, just tissue massage will hit some of these endpoints and sort of act like acupressure. Pulse magnetic field therapy is another. I have a device in my office that I was explaining earlier, a magnetic field turning on and off. And that actually did one of the best jobs of opening up meridians before I worked with the emotional release. Tai Chi is just an exercise. I've taught Tai Chi for years, and some of the movements in Tai Chi are just very slowly opening up that energy flow, or helping to stimulate the energy flow. Not that it's removing blockages, but it kind of strokes the meridian sometimes just by the action, the physical action of the arms and legs. Qigong is another one that I don't have a lot of experience with, but it's a Chinese system of physical exercise and breathing control that's related to Tai Chi. Tapping, some of you may be familiar with tapping. They just, Nick and Jessica Ortner developed the tapping system based on emotional freedom technique, but they just had their 10th annual World Tapping Summit, and one of the guests was Ian Van Zandt, and I had to write down one of the quotes when I was watching the summit. She said, "A thought has energy in and of itself, but then the emotion carries a vibratory response that gets anchored in the body." And that's pretty much, exactly what a trapped emotion is. And so I found that very interesting. Now, tapping is actually with your fingers accessing different points on, the forehead, the face, side of the eye, and collarbone points. And while you're actually repeating statements about the issue you're trying to clear. And that's been very, very beneficial. They've taken that around the world. There's some, pretty influential people that are big fans of tapping. Wayne Dyer used it. Louise Hay used it. Dr. Mercola has been interviewed about it. There's a lot of people in the health and energy industry that have definitely endorsed and use tapping in their trainings as well. And then, the trapped emotion release, which is kind of my baby. I love that. I've been doing that for probably about 7 years now. And that to me has been that's my main therapy now with people, because it actually removes these blockages of energy. A lot of people think that emotions they're just thoughts, right? They come and they're in your head and then they go, but they're really not. They actually do. They get trapped in the body. They're like a physical ball of energy that can get stuck somewhere in the body. And the modality that I use is called the emotion code. It was developed by Dr. Bradley Nelson. He was a chiropractor, a brick and mortar chiropractor in Utah. And he was just sort of guided to start looking at the underlying components of some of these things. And so he developed the emotion code, and it is part of a bigger modality called the body code. And that's where you can actually ask the body pretty much anything. If it's a yes/no answer, you can get an answer to your question with muscle testing, if it's something that your subconscious brain would actually know. And your subconscious brain knows the underlying cause of pretty much everything going on in your body. So what I love about it is I don't have to figure out anything for anybody. I don't have to diagnose them. I don't have to try and figure out where the problem came from. All I do is ask the subconscious brain with muscle testing, and I'll show you a chart, a few slides here, that basically narrows down what I'm asking, as far as narrowing down the emotion that's first priority to get rid of, and then you clear that, and then you go on to the next one. But the client doesn't have to know anything. I don't ask them what's your biggest emotional problem, because the conscious brain doesn't have all the answers. The subconscious brain does. And so the subconscious brain will send little hints to the conscious brain when you have that aha moment, when you kind of hit on something that's true. So I'm going to show you a couple of slides here with, these are just some quotes that Dr. Nelson, and a movie that he put out, a documentary called Emotion, the Movie. I had a copy of that. I'm always lending it out to my clients, so I don't know if I have it anymore or if it's still out there somewhere. But a trapped emotion, we have found, is literally a ball of energy, and these will lodge anywhere in the body and disrupt the normal energy field of the body. He also says, this is another quote of his, trapped emotions are the cause of 90% of your problems lodging somewhere in your body. It's time to recognize the trapped emotions, fears, anxieties, and unprocessed life experiences we hold in our bodies. They are the source of everything that ails us. Now, these are some of the things that can result from trapped emotions. And by resulting from trapped emotions, they're also resulting from the blockage of meridians that those trapped emotions, have caused, I guess. So you can kind of go down the list. A lot of things that a lot of people have, these are the emotional things. Now, there's another whole component with physical things that can also be identified with this type of therapy, but I just brought up the emotional chart. But you can see a lot of those things are things that, are relatively common to a lot of people. And when it comes to the anxiety and depression, he has another quote here. The first step toward healing from anxiety and depression is to remove the heart wall. Now, the heart wall is another set of trapped emotions that they're not stuck in the body. They actually form a wall around the body. And, why do we put up walls? It's to protect ourselves generally. And emotionally, people do the same thing. They put up walls to protect themselves from being hurt. And those walls can maybe keep the bad stuff out, but they also keep the good stuff out. So Dr. Nelson has said, the heart wall, getting rid of the heart wall lets people get back to who they're supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing. And I've had numerous experiences with just amazing changes in people in their life, things that, they had this wall around them and they couldn't get out. I've had people have get into relationships where they've been, struggling in a relationship, and all of a sudden it's just happening for them. People have started new careers. They're just happier. It's a really wonderful result that you see when you get rid of this wall of negative energy that most people have around them. So this chart is, this is the actual chart of emotions that I work with when I'm doing the emotional part. And again, this is just, a small part of the bigger picture. But and through muscle testing, you can ask the subconscious brain anything. It's like a lie detector, really, because if you've ever had any muscle testing done, basically it's kinesiology. But when you ask the subconscious brain, or you ask the body a question, if it's a yes/no answer, their arm will stay strong. If you're holding your arm to the side and I'm pushing down on it, and I ask you to say your name out loud, and then I try to put your arm down, I can't. But if I have you say your name is something that it isn't, and ask you to hold your arm, you can't hold your arm, because the brain can't handle that negative statement, and as well as keep the arm up. And so it is like a lie detector test. So you can fake a no, because you can always let your arm drop, but you can't keep it up there and fake a yes. If it's not yes, you can't do it. You can feel the difference in the muscles. The muscles either have to really try, or else there's just no effort required at all. And so I will ask my patients first, subconsciously, what's the priority trapped emotion that they need to remove? And then I just narrow it down, from the 2 columns. So there's 60 emotions altogether. And basically, by narrowing it down to columns and rows, I get it down to the priority that the body says is the first to get rid of. And it may not be the one that people think is going to come up. They may think about an emotion that, that's affecting them. But what they don't realize is that might be the core of the onion, but they have to get rid of the layers. So they can't necessarily get to the core until they're ready for that. And sometimes things don't surface until they've removed some of the outer layers of emotional blockages. And so, that's been very eye-opening for a lot of people, the emotions that actually come up. And then, I'm a left brainer to start with. I was a pharmacist for 21 years. I'm, science trained, and I have to be able to prove things. So what I do is, that's why I do the meridian testing before. I'll show them how many meridians are blocked. And then once I've removed that priority emotion, I'll then test the meridian system again. And they just can't understand how they can now hold their arm up when they couldn't before. So it shows how the body knows what's the priority, what needs to be dealt with first. And basically I put in terms of, if we can only do one emotion clearing, an appointment, what are going to get the most bang, where we get the most bang for our buck, basically. And the subconscious brain will always take you to the one that's the most important. And then you go deeper and deeper and get rid of the layers. So then, just to make it more real to people, so they don't just think I'm making this up, I will ask how many times that particular emotion is up in their body, and I'll get a number with the muscle testing. And then I can determine at what age each of those blockages happened, and where that energy ball is physically stuck in the body. And it's interesting, how often that will correlate to a physical issue that they have, because they've had, that blockage of energy to their system. So, we live our lives through the filter of our life experiences, and those become our triggers. And I think Ron was talking last week, or maybe it was on the one about stress, where someone got a knock on the door and it was bad news, and then from then on, every time that there was a knock on the door, that's what comes back, and that becomes the trigger, because that first experience, an emotion was generated, and then it can travel through the body for a little while, but then it will stick somewhere. And every time there's a knock on the door, the body says, oh, I remember how to respond to this. And that's where they will, all of a sudden have that recurrence of that emotion. And if you've ever talked to someone and all of a sudden they react to something that is said or done. And it's like they overreact, like they really just go well beyond what's really necessary for the situation. That's usually when someone is having their buttons pushed because of something that's already there. Because as we trap these emotions and have them lodge somewhere in our tissues, muscles or joints or glands or organs, that's putting out, by law of attraction, you're putting out the vibration of that energy, that frequency, because every of these emotions has a frequency to it. So if you're putting out that frequency because you've got that particular emotion lodged in your body, it's like you're a little radio sending out signals. Well, what does the universe do? It sees that and says, sure, I can give you more of that. And so you tend to attract whatever you're putting out. You know, everybody's heard, if you want to be loved, be lovable. You know, if you want joy, be joyful, or give what you want to receive. And the thing with these emotions is that you're giving out signals that you don't even know you're giving out, but you're attracting more of that negativity. Now, triggers can also be very positive, which, of course, you never get rid of those kind. That's not what this chart is about. It doesn't have any of the positive emotions on it. But, I mean, everybody knows you smell something and it's like, oh, that takes you back to a positive memory, a pleasant memory. Or you hear a song and that brings up the emotion, perhaps, of something very nice that happened, you know, in an era where that song was popular or whatever it is. But, you know, we trap positive emotions as well. It's just that those are the ones we want more of. So I think that's...
Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we keep track of the time. We've only got about 8 or 10 minutes.
I will be done.
Okay, good. But I wanted to leave a couple of minutes for people to ask you specific
Yeah,
questions.
you know, I've just got one slide left, and that's my ending slide.
Well, one question that came up already. Are you willing to share this PowerPoint?
Well, I guess it's just my own put together.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Just put the link to.
People can contact me. You know, I can't see the chat right now, but people can contact me. I'll put the email in.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks. Go ahead.
Okay, so basically, I want to end with another quote from Dr. Nelson. It says, "Getting rid of your old emotional baggage may just bring you a new sense of balance, a new inner calm, and a profound healing where nothing else has before." And yeah, that's the end of my slides. So it's a passion of mine, and I hope everybody got something out of this. And I will stop my screen share now. All right.
You know, you and I have spent some time together, and you tried to do your testing on me, and because if you remember, I'm kind of resistant, knowing that what I know as a chiropractor, to all this kind of stuff, and I'm wrong. You know, I think I'm wrong.
Thank you for admitting that. Because I did find some things, didn't I?
You absolutely did. So, and you know that one of my operating philosophies in life is that the need to be right is the chief form of self-sabotage.
That's right.
We discussed that. So I'm really easy about giving up the need to be right. So yeah. So you've done some excellent work with your healing, and thank you so much for sharing it with the rest of us. There's a lot of very interesting comments in the chat. People really are just awestruck with what you're sharing and your knowledge and whatever. And I'm sure there'll be another opportunity to for you to expand this into the iGalen community. I know that you also do long distance emotional release. So if you could put your email there, which I see you just have, and a phone number, maybe some of these people, if they go to the chat, will grab that. And if they're interested in knowing more, they can call you and have a quick, you know, free consultation to see if it makes sense for them to work with you at distance. Okay, great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's easily done because, And at first it took me a while. I mean, I'm a left brainer, right? So some of these things seemed like they were maybe a little far-fetched until I did it. And I worked with a client in the UK, and she experienced what I was finding in her and knew exactly what I was talking about. But it makes sense because energy knows no time or distance. And that's proven. I mean, I don't even have to get into examples of that. Energy doesn't, you know, it's not like if you phone somebody on the other side of the world, it doesn't take 3 weeks for your voice to get there. It's instant. And energy is, you know, that's all instant. So I can do that testing online through a Zoom or, you know, that type of thing. And that's how we do it. So I haven't had a chance to read the questions or the.
Can I interject here quickly?
Hi.
It's Ellie. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Ellie. Nice to meet you on Zoom.
Yes, and everybody else, hello. I just want to let you know how well this meeting is like just been perceived by me. Thank you so much for this.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm glad because I know that you have a lot of modalities yourself, and so you maybe know most of this information already, but oh, good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no,
Debbie.
awesome. Very good. Thank you so much for this.
You're so welcome.
Hey, Debbie, I got a couple of comments.
Okay.
One of the first things you talked about on the call tonight is voltage. And
Yes.
I was looking all day and I have not found it yet. Maybe I loaned it out and never got it back. But the book is The Body Electric.
The Body Electric, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really, really, really good book. And I think
It's
it's just so critical.
Yeah.
And since 1989, I've been doing reflexology. I don't know how many I've done, thousands of them. And then about 5 years later, I picked up a technique called myomanipulation, which is tissue work, sort of Bonnie Pruden's work of acupressure release points in the body. But it's all about getting the flow. But going back to the electric part, one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize, and it goes back to diet, to make that electric work, we need minerals. We need trace minerals. And I want to take it back to Clamex, because in Clamex, we got some really great trace minerals. And boy, we don't get trace minerals in our diet. Not in the modern standard American diet. It's just not there anymore. So we're so mineral deficient, we can't make electrical connections in the body. And then we have stress that's tightening things up, and we've got the poor diet, and nothing works, and we got all these symptoms and conditions.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Ron. And yeah, when a lot of these therapies are even putting in some of that voltage, like the pulse electromagnetic field therapy, that's increasing the body's voltage. In fact, you can take a bottle of water, test the pH of it, put one of the coils of this device around the bottle, turn it on for a while, and you'll have a better pH to the water, more alkaline. So yeah, it's all about electricity, absolutely. And we are electrical beings. We're not just, blood and guts and all of that.
Yeah, and I think too, it goes back to what you just said. It's the acid-alkaline balance, because if we're alkaline, we're going to get a lot of connectivity. If we're acid, it's a dead battery, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And even with food, we talked about food on one of the sessions, and when I tell people when the meridians aren't on, it's like putting food in front of a dead horse. You can't, whether it's therapies, whether it's supplements, if your body is not turned on electrically, you can't benefit from all those good things. So think of the number of supplements people take that their bodies, their intestines aren't working, their stomach isn't working properly to get either extract the nutrition or to absorb the nutrition, the parts that you need back into the body. So electrical is absolutely huge.
Or Bill are great for that.
Oh, okay. We can hear you, John.
Okay, bye-bye.
Sorry, we're hearing your call.
Sorry. So,
okay.
May I just jump in one
Yeah, go ahead, Fawn.
what you, because I think this is fascinating what you brought up, Ron, about the Climax giving us the minerals that do let the electricity of our body have what it needs to be able to function. And what just came, just the way I'm associating is with all these wonderful presentations we've been having, because Debbie, this is fantastic. I've just loved that you've kept me spellbound the whole time. Really, it's great. What if we have a call where we're really bringing in what you've brought, because you had so much, you know, about the electricity, about the meridians, and, you know, with Ron and Dr. Pepperdine's expertise back to how the Climax actually then supports the body with these modalities, with that's just what went through my mind. So it's a suggestion of maybe how we could put together a call that would really help people then be able to talk about the product with the different systems in the body, with the different functions. So that's
I think that's really good, because what I did partway in was relate, you know, what I talked about tonight to all the other topics.
Yes.
And so putting it all together, I mean,
Yes.
when I said at the beginning, I've always chosen the therapies and products that I feel are the best at the time in any given point in my career. Well, that's why I'm using Emulin right now and Climax.
Right. Exactly. I'm right there with you. And I think it would be so valuable. So maybe it's kind of a, I don't know, mastermind call of putting it together or something.
Okay, guys, listen, I really want to allow this to go on forever, but I have a 6 o'clock webinar I have to jump off.
John, always the one to come in.
I know. Well, listen, look, at least I've brought this out. Now you can take it on. Hey, who wants to take over my job? Because literally, I really want to move on to some other things. So I know Ron.
You're being the fun police, John.
No. Listen, okay, you're appointed. Jackie, you're in. Jack, you're in.
I couldn't do as good a job as you, John.
I know you could. You could do
No,
it.
no,
Right.
I'm.
Well, listen, you
technically
guys.
challenged.
Hey, let's wind up. So, Debbie, thank you so much. And
Yeah.
well, what can I say? There's so much information in that little head of yours. I know, and you, having spent time together with you, I know that if you get started on a topic, you get right in, you research, and you get beyond what most people do in terms of research and commitment. So, for all people that are on this call, if you want to learn and benefit from Debbie, just get on that chat line before I take it down. It's dlward53@hotmail.com. DL, so Delaware Lady Ward, 53@hotmail.com. The number 780-674-9061 if you need a consultation about emotional release.
That's my cell number. So if somebody wants to text me on that, identify yourself, so that, because otherwise I'll just see a number. Thanks.
Yeah, great.
And I just want to jump in, because I know, Debbie, you haven't had a chance to read the chat, but I mean, people are acknowledging your passion and knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Fawn.
Fawn, I'm going to send her the
Okay, great.
of the chat line to answer. Okay, you guys, look it's on the hour. I got to stop the recording. It's been my pleasure to have this terrific guest. Ron, thank you so much for your help. And here we go.